ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Miss Sensational Gaming channel. I'm your host, Brittany. In today's video, I'm in a bit of a sour mood. So, let's just watch some culprit swaps made by Arglefumph himself. This one features the suspects from Nancy Drew Message in a Haunted Mansion. We need to figure out what he suggests the culprit should be. And this is just like a suggestion or something like a what if scenario. And if you haven't seen my other two reaction videos of the culprit swap made by Arglefumph, I'll probably need to create a playlist so that you can see it for yourself. But in the meantime, let's get started.
What if Message in a Haunted Mansion had a different culprit? The first two games were a little odd for the series. Most Nancy Drew games have the culprit as one of the four suspects you interact with. Game 3 is the game where this formula actually starts. I think Charlie is the one who's most likely to be the culprit because he works for the culprit in the book. Also, his computer disk shows he knows the legend of El Diablo and the missing gold. I don't think Abby or Rose actually know about the hidden gold in the manor. So if we're keeping the game story that the culprit was after the hidden gold the whole time, then Charlie has to be the culprit. As Abby says, he always seems to be around whenever accidents occur. That's because he's causing them. Rose says she hired Charlie because his rates are so affordable. He purposely charges low rates because he doesn't care about the work. It's just an excuse for him to be in the house and search for gold. Charlie has a secondary motive. He doesn't want anybody to find out he's secretly living in the house. It's in his best interest if they don't turn the building into a bed and breakfast. The longer he delays the grand opening, the longer he gets to stay in the house. Even if his accidents are so bad they convince Rose to sell the house, that would still be a good scenario for Charlie. That would give him time to search the house all by himself with nobody else around. Really, the game does such a good job of providing Charlie with motive and opportunity. You wouldn't have to change much to make him the culprit. The scene of the culprit stealing the gold at the end would play out the exact same way if Charlie was guilty. They could even keep the puzzle of Nancy stopping the culprit with the chandelier. Then everybody would call him Chandelier Charlie, which is a decent nickname, even if it's not as good as calling Louis Chandler Louis Chandelier. What if Abby was the culprit?
Alright. So before we get to Abby, I would like to say for Charlie's case, even though it does make a little bit of sense that he could be the culprit, but my biggest gripe is that he looked and sounded way too innocent to be the one who is trying to get the gold. But I can appreciate the idea concept that maybe Charlie could be the culprit because he wants the gold and he's wants Rose to hire him for a lower rate, knowing that she could not afford it, and of higher rate experts, and the possibility that he's the one who's causing the accidents, according to Abby. It's just an idea that I truly believe it may be possible. And before I get to the Abby part, I need to check for a moment. Okay, sorry about that. I have to take care of certain things, like making sure that my dog is alright. She is actually a senior dog, but she's a bit tinier. Not too tiny, but like almost like a small size. It's very complicated. But let's get back to this video and see what Arglefumph, also known as Michael, has anything to say about Abby being the culprit.
What if Abby was the culprit? The game does not give a thorough explanation for everything the culprit did. I could believe it if some of the mysterious accidents were Abby's fault. Maybe she broke the dumbwaiter by accident because she was trying to set up a trick where a ghost floats down to the first floor. There's a haunting scene in Rose's room where the candles go out and turn back on again. Maybe the fire was Abby's attempt at setting up that mechanism, only it went terribly wrong. It's not a satisfying mystery solution to say Abby was the culprit, only all the accidents were real accidents. So, next I thought, what if Abby's trying to scare Rose off the property as some sort of weird test of her haunting abilities? In Abby's mind, if she can scare Rose with the hauntings, she can scare anyone. Abby's goal is to advertise the building as a haunted bed and breakfast. Rose is merely the victim of Abby's aggressive marketing campaign. But if Abby is faking everything for publicity, that is still a disappointing explanation to me. That would make this a mystery where, if Nancy does nothing, the situation would resolve itself. Next I thought, what if Abby's madly in love with Louis Chandler, only everybody thinks Louis and Rose are a couple. Abby's trying to force Rose out of the picture, so she can have Louis all to herself. That would be a soap opera of a solution. My last thought was that Abby could be the culprit because she's secretly the great-granddaughter of Lizzie Applegate and Diego Valdez. That's the real reason she jumped at the chance to help purchase this house. And it's the real reason why she's trying to contact Valdez's ghost. She heard the family legend about gold in the mansion, and she's been trying to find it while setting up scares. Nancy is way more successful in finding things related to Applegate and Valdez. Abby's jealous and angry, which is why she tried to scare Nancy off with a threatening message and a fire. If that's the story, the game could keep the same ending puzzle where the culprit tries to steal the gold from Nancy. What if Rose was the culprit?
That's interesting. It's interesting how Abby has maybe 4 or possibly 5 possible scenarios of why she could be the culprit, but none of them, besides possibly the 4th one in, or probably the 5th one in his case. I lost track, but what I do know for certain is that even though Abby's the kind of person that wants to turn this mansion into a haunted mansion bed and breakfast, it's just, But I could totally get the possibility that she's related to a certain distant relative of Applegate, and she wanted to find the gold and all that stuff. And the fact that she tried to scare off Nancy for it, it's probably only one motive to, cause these accidents or something along these lines. I have to stop recording because I reached the limit of my Bandicam recording. And now it's time to figure out what will happen if Rose is the culprit.
Nancy. What if Rose was the culprit? Well, then she only asked Nancy to investigate because she thinks that makes her look innocent, and she thinks Nancy is too stupid to solve the mystery. And Nancy will be a good source of free labor. If Rose was underestimating Nancy, it would explain why she only has 3 chores for Nancy to do. What should I do next, Rose? I have no idea. I never thought you'd get this far. Rose's crime would be real estate fraud. She wants to collect on that $1 million fire insurance policy. The seance ends with Rose saying, "Blow out the candles. I don't want to find the house on fire." Maybe that was her plan. She was going to start a fire after the seance and blame Abby. Only she couldn't because Nancy was too busy finding the cash register key in the basement that night. So then Rose made a similar plan to start a fire in the living room. She told Charlie to buy a fireplace screen just so she could blame him when the mansion was destroyed. Once again, Nancy foiled Rose's scheme by putting out the fire. Rose was so mad at Nancy stopping both fires, she left the threatening message under Nancy's door. Rose's final plan was to start a fire while everybody was gone at the winter festival. Using a complex series of mirrors, she manipulated the glass above the doorway, so at precisely 12 p.m., an intense beam of light would shine into the house and hit the wooden staircase banisters, setting them on fire. But once again, Nancy foils the plan by putting the Phoenix Eye into place. That causes the light to show where the hidden gold is, instead of having the light cause a fire. While Nancy is busy getting the gold, Rose bursts into the mansion to see why is it not on fire yet. Rose is furious. She attacks Nancy, and the rest of the game plays out like normal, only with a bit more explanation about Rose's schemes. Those are my thoughts for Game 3's Culprit Swap. I think the ending puzzle of dropping the chandelier would be the same no matter who the culprit is. I can't think of any culprit who would ignore a huge pile of free gold. Even if the culprit's scheme is completely unrelated to the gold, I don't think they'd say no to a huge free fortune.
That's funny. So, apparently there are only 3 suspects besides Lewis. Lewis was the 4th suspect, but there are only 3 suspects that were not the culprit itself. For Rose's case, it has something to do with fraud. She's trying to collect the $1 million for some sort of reason. And she's trying to hire Nancy to do certain tasks, even though it may be impossible. But for Nancy, it's never impossible. And she was trying to set the place on fire, but it didn't work. And she comes up with a plan to have the one in the hall with the circle thing to set on fire. But because Nancy put the Phoenix Eye in it, it reveals where the gold is at. And that's where Rose is like, what? It's not working. She strikes Nancy and then solves why is it not working. It's because she found the gold and decided to take it. So what's interesting about this video is the fact the ending remains the same. Whoever is the culprit that is responsible of this incident and all that stuff and ends up finding the gold, ends up taking it in the first place. But we all know in the actual game, the real culprit is Lewis. If you haven't noticed, then I suggest you go and play it if you have the game at the very least. It's called Nancy Drew Message in a Haunted Mansion. And I gotta say, this has been very, very interesting in my opinion. I do enjoy Uncle Arglefunph's idea concept of swapping culprits of what if instead of Lois it's someone either Rose or Charlie. I think Rose and Charlie are the only ones that may have motives of doing something like this, and then the ending scenario will remain the same, is to get the gold and all that stuff, and then the chandelier falls down on them. I I like that idea because it's the only possible way to capture the culprit in the first place. Abby is the only one who technically does have a little bit of a motive, but it wasn't enough to consider her as the culprit in the first place. So, in my case, 2 of the suspects are Charlie and Rose in this culprit swap video, to say at the very least, are the only 2 that has possibly major motives of wanting to get the gold, even though Rose is like, well, Rose is committing fraud and she probably needs the money. So I guess it does make sense of her getting getting the gold out of what Nancy reveals and all that stuff. As for Abby, she's the only one that doesn't have a strong major motive of why she wanted the gold. But needless to say that this video is very entertaining. The next reaction is going to be Treasure in the Royal Tower, which I have played before. But for now, I'm going to have to wrap this up for today. Please leave a like and subscribe, turn on these notifications so you won't miss a single upload. And I'll see you all in the next reaction video or the next video depending on Let's Plays, gameplays, and so forth. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, be kind to others, and have a blissful, wonderful day.